The murmur of the crowd faded to a hush as Silas Redwood stepped onto the wooden platform, his booming voice carrying across the town square of Empire City, Nevada. It was the summer of 1876, and the annual matchmaking social had drawn nearly every eligible man and woman from miles around. The event had been a tradition since the town's founding, but this year was different this year. Silas had promised a prize of 20 acres to any couple who found love at the gathering and married within 3 months. Standing at the back of the crowd, Sophia Reynolds kept her eyes fixed on the ground, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. At 26 years old, she had long since accepted that she would never be chosen. Her size had made her the subject of whispers and sidelong glances since childhood. The beautiful gowns other women wore seemed to mock her as she stood in her plain brown dress, specially made to fit her ample figure. "Ladies, form a line along the fence," Silas instructed, gesturing toward the white picket fence that bordered the town square. "Gentlemen, you'll have your pick when I fire this pistol." The women scrambled to find favorable positions, jostling and giggling as they arranged themselves. Sophia moved slowly, taking her place at the very end of the line, furthest from where the men had gathered. She didn't see the point in hoping, but her mother had insisted she attend. "You never know what might happen," Margaret Reynolds had said that morning as she helped Sophia with her hair. "God works in mysterious ways." A hush fell over the crowd as Silas raised his pistol. "On the count of 3, gentlemen," he called out. 1, 2, 3. The gunshot cracked through the air and the men surged forward. As expected, the pretty girls at the front of the line were quickly claimed, their delighted squeals filling the square. Sophia watched as woman after woman was chosen, until she was the only one left standing. She swallowed hard against the lump in her throat, preparing to slip away quietly. That's when she saw him. A tall man with broad shoulders and sun-bronzed skin was making his way through the crowd. Unlike the others, he wasn't rushing. His stride was deliberate, his eyes scanning the line of women. When most had already paired off, he continued walking, passing right by several who still remained hopeful. He wore a black Stetson hat pulled low over his brow, and his duster coat swayed with each step. His boots made a distinctive sound on the packed dirt as he approached, and Sophia realized with a start that he was walking directly toward her. She glanced behind her, certain he must be looking for someone else, but there was no one there. Just as she turned back, he stopped before her, removing his hat in one smooth motion. "Xavier Galloway," he said, his voice deep and steady. "Would you do me the honor of joining me for this social, miss?" Sophia blinked in disbelief. "Reynolds," she stammered. "Sophia Reynolds, Miss Reynolds," he repeated, a smile warming his rugged features. "I've been hoping to make your acquaintance." Whispers rippled through the crowd as people noticed what was happening. Sophia could feel their eyes on her, could almost hear their thoughts. Why would a man like Xavier Galloway, a man whose reputation as one of the finest horse trainers in the territory preceded him, choose her? "I'm afraid there must be some mistake," Sophia said quietly, her hands trembling slightly. Xavier's smile didn't waver. "No mistake, Miss Reynolds. I've seen you at church and at the general store. You always have a kind word for old Mrs. Thornton, and last month, when Billy Peterson fell from the oak tree, you were the one who bandaged his knee while the other ladies fretted about the blood on their skirts." Sophia was stunned. She had no idea anyone had noticed such things about her. "So," Xavier continued, extending his arm, "would you join me for a walk? I hear Mrs. Fleming has made her famous apple pie for the social." With trembling fingers, Sophia placed her hand on his arm. "Yes, Mr. Galloway, I would like that very much." As they walked away from the fence, Sophia could feel the stares boring into her back. She heard a woman whisper, "What could he possibly see in her?" And another reply, "Perhaps he lost a bet." Xavier's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, leading Sophia toward the tables laden with food. When they were far enough away from the others, he leaned down slightly to speak into her ear. "Pay them no mind, Miss Reynolds. Their words say more about them than they do about you." Sophia's cheeks flushed. "You're very kind, Mr. Galloway. But you needn't feel obligated to." "I don't do anything out of obligation," he interrupted, his blue eyes serious. "I choose my own path. Always have." As they reached the refreshment table, Mrs. Fleming beamed at them. "Xavier Galloway, as I live and breathe. And Miss Reynolds, how lovely to see you, dear. Here, try the apple pie while it's still warm." She handed them each a plate, giving Sophia an extra large slice. "You enjoy that, honey. A little meat on your bones is what men used to prefer back in my day." "Thank you, Mrs. Fleming," Sophia said softly, accepting the pie. Xavier led her to a bench beneath an old oak tree away from the main crowd. "Mrs. Fleming is right, you know," he said as they sat down. "There was a time when a woman of substance was considered beautiful." "Substance," Sophia repeated, the word tasting bittersweet on her tongue. "That's a kind way of putting it." Xavier's eyes met hers. "I say what I mean, Miss Reynolds, and I mean what I say." He took a bite of his pie, chewing thoughtfully. "I've lived in Empire City for 2 years now, and in that time, I've watched you. Not in an improper way," he added hastily, "but I've observed how you move through the world, how you help others without seeking recognition, how you smile even when people are unkind." Sophia stared at him, unsure how to respond. No man had ever spoken to her this way. "My mother raised me to see a person's character, not just their appearance," Xavier continued. "And yours, Miss Reynolds, shines brighter than anyone's in this town." "You barely know me," Sophia protested weakly. "I'd like to change that," he replied simply. "If you'll permit me." For the remainder of the social, Xavier stayed by Sophia's side. They talked about books she was surprised to learn he enjoyed poetry and about his work with horses. He told her about growing up in Colorado with 3 brothers, and she shared stories of her childhood in Empire City as the daughter of the town's schoolteacher. As the afternoon waned into evening, lanterns were lit around the square, and a small band began to play. Couples moved to the center to dance, and Sophia watched them wistfully. "Would you care to dance, Miss Reynolds?" Xavier asked, standing and extending his hand. Sophia's heart raced with panic. "Oh, I don't. I mean, I've never really. I'm not very light on my feet, Mr. Galloway." His expression remained warm. "Neither am I. We can be clumsy together." Before she could protest further, he had gently pulled her to her feet and led her toward the dancing area. As they reached the edge of the crowd, Sophia hesitated, acutely aware of the stares and whispers. "Everyone is watching," she whispered. "Let them," Xavier replied, placing one hand at her waist and taking her hand with the other. "They might learn something about true beauty." They began to move to the music, and to Sophia's surprise, Xavier was a capable dancer, guiding her smoothly through the steps. She stumbled once, her cheeks burning with embarrassment, but he steadied her with a gentle pressure on her waist. "My mother always said dancing is just walking in circles with style," he said with a grin. "You're doing just fine." As they continued to dance, Sophia gradually relaxed, allowing herself to enjoy the moment. The music, the warm summer evening, and the unexpected attention from this handsome cowboy combined to create a sense of dreamlike wonder. When the dance ended, Xavier didn't release her hand immediately. Instead, he leaned close and asked, "May I call on you tomorrow, Miss Reynolds? Perhaps we could go for a ride along the creek." Sophia hesitated. Part of her, the cautious part that had been hurt before, wanted to protect herself from what surely must be some kind of cruel joke. But another part, a part that had never quite given up hope, wanted desperately to believe in the sincerity she saw in Xavier's eyes. "Yes," she heard herself say. "I would like that." He smiled, and the warmth of it reached his eyes. "I'll come by at noon if that suits you." As they walked back toward where her parents were waiting, Sophia could feel the weight of stares following them. Xavier must have sensed her discomfort because he leaned down and whispered, "Remember, Miss Reynolds, the opinions of sheep mean little to lions." The metaphor made her smile despite her nervousness. When they reached her parents, Xavier greeted them respectfully, introducing himself to Sophia's father with a firm handshake. "Mr. Reynolds, Mrs. Reynolds, it's a pleasure to meet you both. I've asked your daughter if I might call on her tomorrow for a ride along the creek, and she has agreed. I hope this meets with your approval." Thomas Reynolds, a tall man with graying hair and kind eyes, studied Xavier for a moment before responding. "My daughter has good judgment, Mr. Galloway. If she's agreed to your company, then you have my blessing." "Thank you, sir," Xavier replied with a slight bow of his head. Then, turning to Sophia, he took her hand and raised it briefly to his lips. "Until tomorrow, Miss Reynolds." With that, he replaced his hat, nodded to her parents, and strode away into the gathering dusk. As soon as he was out of earshot, Margaret Reynolds turned to her daughter, her eyes wide with excitement. "Sophia, Xavier Galloway, do you know what they say about him?" "No, Mother, what do they say?" Sophia asked, still dazed by the events of the day. "They say he's turned down offers from ranchers twice his age to partner with them. They say he has a way with horses like no one's ever seen. And now he's calling on my Sophia." She clutched her hands to her chest, beaming. Thomas placed a gentle hand on his wife's shoulder. "Now, Margaret, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's just a ride along the creek." But Sophia barely heard them. She was watching Xavier's retreating figure, wondering if tomorrow would bring more of the same surprising attention, or if the light of a new day would reveal this all to be nothing more than a passing fancy on his part. Later that night, as she prepared for bed, Sophia caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Her brown hair hung loose around her shoulders, and her nightgown did little to disguise her size. She had never considered herself beautiful, how could she, when the world had spent years telling her otherwise? Yet today, for a few hours, Xavier Galloway had made her feel as though she might be worth seeing, worth knowing, perhaps even worth loving. "Don't be foolish," she whispered to her reflection. "One afternoon doesn't change who you are." But as she climbed into bed and blew out the candle, Sophia couldn't help but wonder if perhaps, just perhaps, it might change who she believed herself to be. The following day dawned bright and clear, with a gentle breeze that rustled the curtains in Sophia's bedroom. She woke earlier than usual, her stomach fluttering with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Would Xavier truly come as he had promised, or would the light of day have changed his mind? She spent the morning helping her mother with chores, trying to distract herself from the approaching hour. At 11, Margaret shooed her upstairs to get ready. "Wear your blue dress," her mother suggested. "It brings out your eyes." Sophia hesitated. "Mother, do you think Mr. Galloway was sincere yesterday? Or might it be some kind of jest?" Margaret's expression softened as she cupped her daughter's face in her hands. "Sophia Reynolds, you listen to me. I have watched you grow from a sweet child into a compassionate, intelligent woman. Any man would be fortunate to have your attention, and Xavier Galloway doesn't strike me as the type to play cruel games." Somewhat reassured, Sophia dressed in her blue calico dress and pinned her hair up in a simple style. She had just descended the stairs when a knock sounded at the door. Thomas opened it to reveal Xavier, hatless and holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. He was dressed in clean trousers and a crisp white shirt, his dark hair combed neatly. "Good afternoon, Mr. Reynolds," Xavier greeted him respectfully. "I've come to call on Miss Sophia as arranged." Thomas invited him in, and when Xavier's eyes found Sophia standing at the foot of the stairs, his face broke into a genuine smile. "Miss Reynolds," he said, crossing to her and presenting the wildflowers, "you look lovely today." Sophia accepted the flowers with trembling hands. "Thank you, Mr. Galloway. These are beautiful. I picked them along the creek this morning," he explained. "I thought they might brighten your day." Margaret appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Why don't I put these in water while you two go on your ride?" "I've packed a small picnic if you'd like to take it." Xavier accepted the basket with thanks, and soon they were outside where he had 2 horses waiting. One was a magnificent chestnut stallion, the other a gentle-looking mare. "This is Thunder," Xavier said, patting the stallion's neck. "And this is Daisy. She's as sweet-natured as they come, perfect for an afternoon ride." Sophia approached Daisy cautiously. "She's beautiful, but I must confess, Mr. Galloway, I haven't ridden much since I was a girl." Xavier's expression remained encouraging. "Daisy knows her way. And I'll be right beside you." He helped her mount, his strong hands respectful but sure as he boosted her onto the saddle. If he noticed her weight, he gave no indication, handling the task with effortless grace. They rode at a leisurely pace out of town, following a well-worn trail that led to Silver Creek. The day was perfect for riding, warm but not hot, with just enough breeze to carry the scent of pine and wildflowers. "How did you come to work with horses, Mr. Galloway?" Sophia asked as they rode side by side. Xavier's expression grew thoughtful. "My father raised horses in Colorado. He taught me everything I know about them. When he passed 5 years ago, I worked for various ranchers until I saved enough to start my own training business." "I'm sorry about your father," Sophia said softly. "Thank you. He was a good man." Xavier looked over at her. "What about you? Have you always lived in Empire City?" Sophia nodded. "My father came here to teach when I was just a baby. I've never lived anywhere else, though I've often dreamed of seeing other places." Where would you go if you could go anywhere? The question surprised her. Few people had ever asked about her dreams. San Francisco, perhaps, or New York, somewhere with bookshops and theaters and art galleries. Xavier smiled. "I've been to San Francisco once. The buildings climb right up the hills and the bay is so vast you can barely see the other side on a foggy day." "It sounds wonderful," Sophia said wistfully. "Maybe you'll see it someday," he replied. "Dreams have a way of coming true when you least expect it." They reached the creek around 1 o'clock and dismounted in a small clearing surrounded by cottonwood trees. Xavier spread a blanket on the grass and unpacked the picnic Margaret had prepared. Fried chicken, biscuits, apple tarts, and a jar of lemonade. As they ate, Xavier told stories of the horses he'd trained and the places he'd seen. He described the mountains of Colorado, the deserts of New Mexico, and the vast plains of Texas with such vivid detail that Sophia could almost see them. "You speak like a poet, Mr. Galloway," she remarked. He looked slightly embarrassed. "My mother loved books. She taught all us boys to read, but I was the only one who shared her passion for poetry. My brothers teased me mercilessly about it." "What kind of poetry do you enjoy?" Sophia asked, genuinely curious. "Wordsworth, mostly, and Walt Whitman." He hesitated, then added, "I try my hand at writing some now and then, though I doubt it's any good." Sophia's interest was piqued. "Would you share some with me sometime?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. "You'd really want to hear it, very much so." Xavier looked away, but not before Sophia caught the pleased expression on his face. "Perhaps I will then. Someday." After they finished eating, they walked along the creek, talking easily about books they'd read and people they knew in town. Sophia found herself laughing more than she had in years, comfortable in a way she seldom felt outside her family. As they approached a bend in the creek, Xavier suddenly pointed to the opposite bank. "Look," he whispered. "Deer." A doe and two fawns were drinking from the water, their ears flicking attentively. Sophia and Xavier stood perfectly still, watching as the delicate creatures quenched their thirst. "They're beautiful," Sophia breathed. "They remind me of a poem," Xavier said softly. "Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour," Sophia continued, surprising him. "Robert Frost is another favorite of mine." The doe raised her head, alerted to their presence, and in a flash, all three deer bounded away into the forest. Xavier turned to look at Sophia, an expression of wonder on his face. "You continue to surprise me, Miss Reynolds." "Is that a good thing?" she asked uncertainly. "The very best kind of thing," he assured her. They returned to the clearing where their horses grazed peacefully. As they packed up the remains of their picnic, Xavier said, "There's a dance at the Founders Hall this Saturday evening. Would you do me the honor of attending with me?" Sophia hesitated. The social had been one thing, a public gathering where everyone attended, but a proper dance as Xavier's companion. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. "People will talk," she said quietly. Xavier stepped closer, his blue eyes serious. "Let them. I care about your company, not their opinions." "Why?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "Why me, Mr. Galloway? You could escort any woman in Empire City." He was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. "When I first came to town, I watched how people treated each other. I saw women who were beautiful on the outside but cruel in their actions. And I saw you kind to children, respectful to elders, generous with everyone. That's the kind of beauty that matters to me, Miss Reynolds." His sincerity was unmistakable, and Sophia found herself nodding. "Then yes, Mr. Galloway, I would be honored to attend the dance with you." The ride back to town was filled with comfortable conversation, and when they reached Sophia's house, Xavier helped her dismount with the same careful respect he had shown earlier. "Thank you for a lovely afternoon," Sophia said as they stood at her front door. "The pleasure was mine," Xavier replied. He took her hand and, just as he had the day before, raised it briefly to his lips. "Until Saturday, Miss Reynolds." As she watched him ride away, Sophia felt a warmth spreading through her chest, a feeling she recognized as hope, fragile but persistent. Inside, her mother was waiting, eager for details. Sophia shared some of the day's events, though she kept certain moments, the poem by the creek, the quiet conversations, to herself, treasuring them privately. That night, she wrote in her journal for the first time in months, trying to capture the feelings of the day before they faded. As she wrote, she realized with a start that she hadn't once thought about her size while in Xavier's company. He had a way of making her forget the physical attributes that had defined her in the eyes of others for so long. The days leading up to Saturday passed in a blur of anticipation and anxiety. Sophia and her mother worked together to alter one of her dresses for the occasion, adding a bit of lace to the collar and cuffs and letting out the seams where needed. On Saturday evening, as Sophia stood before the mirror in her freshened dress, her mother placed a cameo brooch at her throat. "This was your grandmother's," Margaret said, her eyes misty. "She would have wanted you to wear it tonight. The brooch was beautiful carved ivory on a bed of gold." "Thank you, Mother," Sophia whispered, touching it gently. When Xavier arrived, he was dressed in his finest, a black suit with a silver brocade vest and polished boots. His expression when he saw Sophia made her heart skip a beat. "You are a vision, Miss Reynolds," he said softly. Thomas cleared his throat. "You'll have her home by 10, Mr. Galloway." "Yes, sir," Xavier promised. Not a minute later. The Founders' Hall was already crowded when they arrived. Conversations faltered as they entered, and Sophia felt the weight of stares from every corner of the room. She gripped Xavier's arm a little tighter, drawing strength from his steady presence. Eliza Parker, the banker's daughter and one of the most sought-after women in Empire City, approached them with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Xavier, how nice to see you here. And Sophia, what a surprise." Xavier nodded politely. "Miss Parker." "I saved you a dance," Eliza continued, ignoring Sophia completely. "The third set, I believe we agreed." Xavier's expression remained neutral. "I'm afraid you're mistaken, Miss Parker. I've promised all my dances to Miss Reynolds this evening." Eliza's smile faltered. "Surely not all of them. That would be most unusual." "Nevertheless, it's true," Xavier replied firmly. "If you'll excuse us, I believe the first set is about to begin." He led Sophia away, leaving Eliza staring after them. As soon as they were out of earshot, Sophia whispered, "You didn't have to do that. I wouldn't have minded if you danced with others." Xavier stopped and turned to face her. "Sophia," he said, using her given name for the first time, "I came here tonight to be with you, only you." The music began, and Xavier led her onto the dance floor. As they moved through the steps of the waltz, Sophia became aware of the murmurs around them. Some were admiring Xavier's grace. Others were speculating about his choice of partner in less flattering terms. During a pause in the dancing, they stepped outside for some fresh air. The night was cool, and Xavier draped his jacket around Sophia's shoulders without being asked. "Are you enjoying yourself?" he asked. Sophia considered the question honestly. "Parts of it," she admitted. "Dancing with you is wonderful. The gossip, less so." Xavier leaned against the railing of the porch, looking out at the star-filled sky. "You know, when I was a boy, my brothers used to tease me for being the smallest. They called me Runt until I was 15 and finally grew taller than all of them." "Really?" Sophia found it hard to imagine Xavier as anything but the strong, confident man before her. "Really," he confirmed. "People find all sorts of reasons to make others feel small. Your size, my interest in books instead of brawling, they're just excuses for cruelty." "How did you stop letting it hurt you?" Sophia asked quietly. Xavier turned to look at her, his expression serious in the moonlight. "I decided their opinions mattered less than my own happiness. And I decided to surround myself with people who saw me clearly, not through the lens of their own prejudices." He reached out and took her hand. "People like you, Sophia Reynolds." Inside, the music had started again. Xavier squeezed her hand gently. "Shall we return to the dancing? Or would you prefer to stay out here a while longer?" "Let's dance," Sophia said, finding her courage. "After all, I was promised all your dances this evening." Xavier's smile was worth every whisper she would endure. "So you were." They returned to the hall and danced every set, sometimes laughing as they missed steps, sometimes moving in perfect harmony. By the final dance, Sophia had stopped noticing the stares, lost in the simple joy of the moment. As promised, Xavier delivered her home exactly at 10 o'clock. At her door, he took both her hands in his. "Thank you for a memorable evening," he said softly. "Would you join me for church tomorrow? We could have dinner with your parents afterward if they are amenable." "I'd like that very much," Sophia replied, her heart light with happiness. "Good night then, Sophia," Xavier said. And before she quite realized what was happening, he leaned forward and placed a gentle kiss on her cheek. Then he was gone, leaving Sophia standing on her doorstep, her hand raised to the spot his lips had touched, wondering if life could possibly get any sweeter than this moment. Over the next few weeks, Xavier became a regular visitor at the Reynolds household. He and Sophia went riding every Sunday after church, took walks through town in the evenings, and once even traveled to the neighboring town of Silver Springs for a traveling theatrical production. With each meeting, their connection deepened. Xavier shared more of his poetry, reading to Sophia under the shade of the old oak tree by the creek. She, in turn, revealed her dream of someday writing stories for children, a secret she had never told anyone outside her family. "You should do it," Xavier encouraged her. "Your way with words is remarkable." "Perhaps," she said, though the thought of putting her stories on paper for others to read still frightened her. One evening in late August, Xavier arrived at the Reynolds home looking uncharacteristically nervous. After exchanging pleasantries with Margaret and Thomas, he asked if he might speak with Sophia privately. "We could walk to the gazebo in the town square," he suggested. With her parents' blessing, Sophia accompanied him into the warm evening. The town square was quiet at this hour, most people at home having their supper. The gazebo, lit with a single lantern, offered a private spot to talk. Once they were seated on the bench inside, Xavier took both of Sophia's hands in his. "Sophia, these past weeks have been the happiest of my life." "For me as well," she admitted, her heart beginning to race. "I've been thinking about the future," he continued. "My business is growing. I've been offered a contract to supply horses to the Army fort in Carson City, and I've saved enough to buy a small ranch just outside of town." Sophia nodded, not quite sure where this was leading but pleased for his success. Xavier took a deep breath. "What I'm trying to say, rather poorly, is that I can now offer a comfortable life to a wife." He squeezed her hands gently. "To you, Sophia, if you'll have me." For a moment, Sophia couldn't speak. Despite the growing closeness between them, despite the obvious affection Xavier had shown her, she had not allowed herself to hope for this. "Xavier," she finally managed, "are you certain?" "There are so many women who—" "I don't want any other woman," he interrupted firmly. "I want you, Sophia Reynolds. Your kindness, your intelligence, your gentle spirit. I love you, and I want to spend my life with you if you'll do me the great honor of becoming my wife." Tears sprang to Sophia's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Oh, Xavier, yes." His face broke into a radiant smile, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her as though she were the most precious thing in the world. When he finally released her, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "It was my mother's," he said, opening it to reveal a delicate gold ring with a small pearl at its center. "My father gave it to me before he died, said I should give it to the woman who captured my heart the way my mother captured his." With trembling hands, Sophia allowed him to slip the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as though it had been made for her. "I'll speak to your father tomorrow," Xavier promised. "Ask for his blessing properly." "He'll give it," Sophia assured him. "Both my parents are quite fond of you," Xavier smiled. "And I of them." He raised her hand to his lips, kissing the ring he had just placed there. "When would you like to be married? I know most women prefer a long engagement to plan everything, but I don't need a long engagement," Sophia interrupted. "Or an elaborate wedding, just you." The look Xavier gave her was so full of love that Sophia felt her heart might burst from happiness. "October, then. When the leaves have turned but before the snow falls." October would be perfect, she agreed. They walked back to her home hand in hand, making plans for their future together. Xavier would finish the work on his ranch house, adding the feminine touches it currently lacked. Sophia would prepare her trousseau and learn everything she could about being a rancher's wife. At her door, Xavier kissed her properly for the first time, a sweet, gentle kiss that promised a lifetime of love. "Until tomorrow, my darling," he whispered against her lips. As he walked away, Sophia watched him go, the reality of what had just happened slowly sinking in. She, Sophia Reynolds, was going to be married to Xavier Galloway. The woman everyone had pitied, the last one standing at the social, had found a love so pure and true it took her breath away. Inside, her parents were waiting anxiously. One look at her face told them everything they needed to know. "He's asked you to marry him," Margaret said, tears of joy springing to her eyes. Sophia nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Her father crossed the room and embraced her gently. "I always knew someone would see your worth one day," he said gruffly. "I'm glad it's Xavier. He's a good man." That night, as Sophia lay in bed, she held her hand up to catch the moonlight on her ring. Just 2 months ago, she had resigned herself to a life alone, convinced that no man would ever see past her size to the person she was inside. Now, she was engaged to a man who not only saw her true self, but cherished it. News of their engagement spread quickly through Empire City. Some expressed genuine pleasure. Others were less charitable in their assessment. Eliza Parker was overheard telling her friends that Xavier must be marrying Sophia for her father's money, a ridiculous notion, as Thomas Reynolds, while respected, was far from wealthy on a teacher's salary. Sophia did her best to ignore such talk, focusing instead on preparations for the wedding. Margaret helped her sew a simple but elegant wedding dress of ivory satin, with lace at the collar and cuffs. Xavier, meanwhile, was busy putting the finishing touches on their home, adding a vegetable garden at Sophia's request, and building bookshelves for their combined collection of books. As October approached, Sophia found herself growing increasingly anxious not about marrying Xavier, but about the wedding night that would follow. Her mother had explained the basics of what to expect, but had done little to ease Sophia's fears about Xavier seeing her body. 2 weeks before the wedding, as they rode along their favorite trail by the creek, Sophia finally gathered the courage to voice her concerns. "Xavier," she began hesitantly, "there's something I need to discuss with you." He rained thunder to a stop, his expression immediately concerned. "What is it, my love?" Sophia felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. "It's about, after the wedding, I'm afraid. I worry that you might be disappointed when." Understanding dawned in Xavier's eyes. He dismounted and came to help Sophia down from Daisy. Once she was standing before him, he took her hands in his. "Sophia Reynolds, soon to be Sophia Galloway, listen to me carefully," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "There is nothing about you, nothing that could ever disappoint me. I love all of you exactly as you are." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. "You say that now, and I'll say it on our wedding night and every night thereafter for the rest of our lives," Xavier interrupted. "You are beautiful to me, Sophia. Your body, your heart, your soul, all of you is precious to me." He cupped her face in his hands, his blue eyes serious. "Do you trust me with my life?" she whispered. "Then trust me in this," he said softly. "Our wedding night will be the beginning of a lifetime of joy together. I promise you that." His words and the love behind them eased Sophia's fears. As they continued their ride, she found herself looking forward to their marriage with renewed anticipation. The wedding day dawned clear and cool, the aspens around Empire City ablaze with golden leaves. At the small church, where Sophia had attended services, her entire life, friends and family gathered to witness the union. Margaret helped Sophia dress, fastening the pearl buttons of her gown with trembling fingers. "You look beautiful, my darling girl," she said, placing the cameo brooch at Sophia's throat once more. "Your grandmother would have been so proud." Thomas, waiting to escort his daughter down the aisle, could barely speak when he saw her. "My little girl," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. "All grown up and more beautiful than I could have imagined." Inside the church, Xavier waited at the altar, his expression one of pure joy as Sophia appeared at the doorway on her father's arm. The murmurs that had once followed her everywhere were absent today, replaced by appreciative gasps as she made her way slowly toward her future husband. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, with Reverend Thompson speaking eloquently about the nature of true love. When it came time for the vows, Xavier's strong voice never wavered as he promised to love, honor, and cherish Sophia for all his days. When she spoke her own vows, Sophia's voice grew stronger with each word, her initial nervousness giving way to the certainty of her love for this man who had seen her when no one else would look. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Thompson said at last. "You may kiss your bride." Xavier's kiss was tender yet passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. As they turned to face their guests as Mr. and Mrs. Xavier Galloway, Sophia felt a happiness so complete it seemed to radiate from her very soul. The celebration that followed at the town hall was joyous, with music and dancing and more food than the small gathering could possibly consume. Xavier never left Sophia's side, his hand often finding hers as if to reassure himself that she was really his wife at last. As the sun began to set, they bid farewell to their guests and departed for their new home. Xavier had arranged for Sophia's belongings to be moved earlier in the week, so everything was ready for their arrival. At the gate to their property, Xavier surprised Sophia by lifting her into his arms. "Welcome home, Mrs. Galloway," he said, carrying her across the threshold of the house they would share. Inside, he had prepared one final surprise. The main room was filled with vases of wildflowers, the same kind he had brought her on their first outing, and dozens of candles cast a warm, golden light over everything. "Oh, Xavier," Sophia breathed, taking in the romantic scene. "It's beautiful." "Not as beautiful as you," he replied, setting her gently on her feet. "Are you hungry? Thirsty? I have some wine if you'd like." Sophia shook her head, suddenly shy despite the months of courtship. "No, I'm fine." Xavier seemed to understand her nervousness. "Would you like to see the rest of the house first? I want you to feel comfortable here." Grateful for his sensitivity, Sophia nodded. He showed her through each room: the kitchen with its new cast iron stove, the cozy sitting room with bookshelves lining one wall, the small study where he kept his business records, and finally, their bedroom. Here, too, he had placed flowers and candles, creating an atmosphere of warmth and romance. The bed was covered with a handmade quilt that Sophia recognized as his mother's work. He had shown it to her once before, explaining that it was one of the few possessions he had kept from his childhood home. "I thought you might like having a piece of my family's history in our home," Xavier said, noticing her recognition. "I love it," Sophia assured him, touched by the gesture. Xavier stepped closer, his expression tender. "I'll give you some privacy to change if you'd like. Take all the time you need." After he left, closing the door softly behind him, Sophia removed her wedding dress and changed into the nightgown her mother had helped her make, a simple garment of fine white cotton with delicate embroidery at the neck and hem. She unpinned her hair, letting it fall in waves down her back, and sat on the edge of the bed, her heart racing with anticipation and lingering nervousness. When Xavier returned, he had removed his jacket and waistcoat, wearing just his shirt and trousers. He paused in the doorway, his eyes taking in the sight of Sophia with her hair loose around her shoulders. "You are so beautiful," he said softly, coming to sit beside her on the bed. "My wife. I can hardly believe it's real." "It's real," Sophia assured him, reaching out to touch his face. "We're really married." Xavier caught her hand and kissed her palm. "I promise to spend every day of our life together, making you as happy as I am at this moment." He leaned forward and kissed her gently, his hands cradling her face as if she were made of the finest porcelain. Sophia responded tentatively at first, then with growing confidence as Xavier's tenderness banished her fears. Later, as they lay entwined beneath his mother's quilt, Xavier whispered words of love against her skin, mapping every curve and valley of her body with reverent hands, showing her with every touch how deeply he cherished her. And Sophia, who had spent so many years hiding herself from the world, found the courage to be truly seen and loved for the first time. In the quiet darkness of their bedroom, all doubts fell away, replaced by a certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be, in the arms of a man who saw her beauty when no one else would look. The first year of their marriage passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. Xavier's business continued to thrive, with his reputation as a horse trainer spreading throughout Nevada and into California. Sophia found her place as a rancher's wife, learning to manage the household and even helping with the horses when needed. In the spring, she planted a larger garden than Xavier had started, adding flowers among the vegetables. By summer, their little ranch was a riot of color, drawing compliments from visitors. Their life together fell into comfortable rhythms. Xavier rose before dawn to work with the horses, while Sophia prepared breakfast. They often ate lunch together on the porch, sharing news and plans for the future. In the evenings, they read to each other from favorite books or simply sat in companionable silence, enjoying the peace of their home. One evening in late summer, just shy of their first anniversary, Xavier returned from Carson City with a special gift for Sophia, a printing press. "For your children's stories," he explained as she stared at the machine in wonder. "I thought you might like to print a few copies, see how they're received." Tears sprang to Sophia's eyes. "Xavier, it must have cost a fortune." He shrugged, looking pleased with himself. "We can afford it, and your stories deserve to be read, Sophia." With Xavier's encouragement, Sophia gathered the courage to compile her tales into a small book, which she titled Whispers from the Creek. Xavier helped her operate the press, and together they bound 20 copies, sending them to friends and family and placing a few in the general store in Empire City. To Sophia's amazement and delight, the books sold quickly. The owner of the store requested more copies, and soon orders were coming from neighboring towns as well. By Christmas, she was working on a second collection, her confidence growing with each positive response. As their second year of marriage began, Xavier and Sophia started to talk more seriously about children. Both wanted a family, and they agreed that the time felt right to begin one. Nature, however, had other plans. Month after month passed with no sign of pregnancy, and Sophia began to worry that her size might be preventing conception. When she voiced this fear to Xavier, he immediately suggested they consult Dr. Wilson. The doctor, after examining Sophia, assured them both that there was no physical reason they couldn't have children. "These things take time," he said kindly. "Continue trying and try not to worry too much about it. Stress can delay conception." Taking his advice to heart, they decided to focus on enjoying their life together and let nature take its course. Xavier expanded the ranch, adding more pasture land and building a larger stable. Sophia's second book of stories proved even more popular than the first, and she began working on a novel for adults, a romance set in the early days of the Nevada Territory. In the spring of their third year of marriage, just when they had almost resigned themselves to being childless, Sophia missed her monthly cycle. A visit to Dr. Wilson confirmed what they had begun to hope. They were going to have a baby. Xavier's reaction to the news was everything Sophia could have wished for. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around despite her protestations about her increasing weight, and kissed her soundly. "A baby," he kept saying, his face alight with joy. "Our baby." The pregnancy was not easy. Sophia's already substantial frame grew larger, and she suffered from swollen ankles and back pain. Xavier was endlessly patient, massaging her feet in the evenings and reading to her when she was too uncomfortable to sleep. "You're even more beautiful now," he told her one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting on the swell of her belly. "Carrying our child. There's nothing more magnificent in the world." In the late autumn, just as the leaves were beginning to fall, Sophia went into labor. The birth was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the following day. Xavier refused to leave her side, holding her hand through each contraction, wiping her brow and whispering words of encouragement. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, their son was born. Alexander Thomas Galloway was a robust baby with a shock of dark hair and his father's blue eyes. "He's perfect," Xavier whispered, tears streaming down his face as he held his son for the first time. "Just like his mother." The years that followed brought more happiness than Sophia had ever dreamed possible. Alexander, or Alex as they called him, grew into a curious, active boy with his father's love of horses and his mother's love of stories. When he was 3, he was joined by a sister, Margaret Rose, named for both grandmothers. Sophia's writing career flourished alongside her family. By the time Maggie was born, she had published 3 novels and 4 collections of children's stories, all printed on the press Xavier had given her. Her books were now sold in bookstores throughout the West, and she occasionally received letters from readers as far away as New York and Boston. Xavier's horse training business expanded to include breeding, with his line of quarter horses becoming known for their intelligence and gentle temperament. He was often asked to judge at horse shows and to consult on breeding programs at larger ranches. Their success allowed them to build a larger home when the children were still young, though they kept the original house as a guest cottage. The new home had plenty of room for their growing family, and for the frequent visitors they hosted Sophia's parents, Xavier's brothers and their families, and friends from town. Life, of course, was not without its challenges. Alex broke his arm falling from a horse when he was 7, giving them all a terrible fright. Maggie developed a severe fever at 4 that had them fearing for her life for several days. And a drought during their 10th year of marriage nearly ruined the ranch, forcing them to sell some of their stock to survive. But through it all, Xavier and Sophia's love remained steadfast. The bond that had formed on that summer day when he walked past everyone else to choose her only grew stronger with each passing year. Each shared joy, each overcome hardship. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Xavier surprised Sophia with a trip to San Francisco, the city she had dreamed of seeing when they first met. They spent 2 glorious weeks exploring bookshops and art galleries, attending the theater, and walking along the bay. Xavier even arranged for a private showing of her books at a prestigious bookstore, where she was surprised to find a small but enthusiastic group of readers waiting to meet her. "You see," Xavier said as they returned to their hotel that evening, "I told you your stories deserve to be read." Sophia squeezed his hand, her heart full of love for this man who had believed in her even when she hadn't believed in herself. "You've made all my dreams come true, Xavier. Every single one." He pulled her close, his arms as strong and sure as they had been on the day they met. "Not all of them, I hope. I want to spend the rest of my life making new dreams come true for you." "We will," she promised. "Together." As they returned to Empire City and to their family, Sophia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. from the lonely young woman standing at the end of the line, watching as every other woman was chosen before her, to the confident writer, mother, and wife she had become. It was a transformation she could never have imagined on her own. It had begun with a single choice: Xavier Galloway walking past every other woman to choose her. But it had continued through thousands of daily choices they both made to love, to support, to believe in each other. And in those choices, they had built a life richer and more beautiful than either could have created alone. Years later, when their children were grown with families of their own, and Empire City had evolved from a small frontier town to a thriving community, Sophia and Xavier still rode out to Silver Creek on Sunday afternoons. Their pace was slower now, their hair touched with silver, but the love between them remained as vibrant as ever. On one such afternoon, as they sat beneath the same cottonwood trees where they had shared their first picnic, Sophia asked a question that had lingered in her mind for decades. "Xavier," she said, her hand resting comfortably in his, "do you remember the day we met at the matchmaking social as if it were yesterday?" He replied with a smile. "Why did you walk past all those other women to choose me? Truly." Xavier was quiet for a moment, his gaze drifting to the creek where the water flowed endlessly, just as it had on that day so long ago. "Do you remember the Sunday before that social? You were sitting in church, 3 rows ahead of me." Sophia nodded, though she couldn't recall anything special about that particular Sunday. A child was crying, the Wilsons' youngest, I think. His mother was trying to quiet him, looking embarrassed and distressed. You turned around, smiled at her, and then offered the boy your handkerchief, which had a small embroidered butterfly on it. Xavier's eyes met hers, still as blue and clear as they had been in his youth. "It was such a small thing, but the kindness in your face, the genuine warmth of your smile. I knew then that you were someone special, someone whose heart was as beautiful as her face." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. "All these years, and you never told me." "I thought I had," Xavier said, squeezing her hand gently, "if not in words, then in all the ways I've loved you." And he had, Sophia realized. Every day of their life together, Xavier had shown her that true love sees beyond the surface, beyond the judgments of others, to the person within. He had given her the courage to become that person fully, to write her stories, to raise their children, to live without fear of how the world might see her. As the sun began to set, casting golden light through the leaves of the cottonwoods, Xavier helped Sophia to her feet. They mounted their horses, older, gentler animals now, but still descendants of Thunder and Daisy, and began the slow ride home. Their ranch had expanded over the years, now encompassing several hundred acres. The original cottage where they had begun their life together still stood, though it was now used as a writing studio for Sophia. Their main house, with its wide porch and many windows, was visible as they crested the last hill. Smoke curled from the chimney, signaling that some of their family had arrived for their weekly Sunday dinner, perhaps Alex and his wife and 3 children, or Maggie and her husband, who lived in Carson City but visited often. "Home," Xavier said, drawing his horse to a stop to admire the view. Sophia smiled at the man who had changed her life with a simple choice and a steadfast love. "Yes," she agreed, her heart as full now as it had been on their wedding day. Home. Together they rode toward the house, toward the life they had built, toward the family that was their legacy. And as they did, Sophia thought about all the women who had stood in line that summer day so many years ago, hoping to be chosen. None of them could have known that the last woman standing would be the one to find a love so true it would span decades, overcome every obstacle, and grow only stronger with time. She had been the last one chosen, But as Xavier had shown her every day since, she was also the only one he had ever truly seen.